Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. Today we're reviewing the cheapest 4K gaming monitor, the Gigabyte M27UP. At a price tag of just $300 US, Gigabyte are undercutting the competition quite significantly in 2025, lowering the barrier of entry to 4K gaming. And this isn't some slow 60Hz panel either, it's a 27-inch 4K 160Hz IPS LCD, and it even includes dual mode functionality, allowing you to run it at 1080p 320Hz. At least on the spec sheet, it seems like quite a capable display. Previously, to get a panel like this, you would have had to spend around $400 US or more, maybe $350 if you were lucky. Gigabyte's previous model in this series, the M27UA, is currently priced at $430, so we're looking at a discount of more than $100. To get a model with dual mode, you'd have to spend even more. The Asus XG27UCG and Dell AW2725QF are $450 at best, so this is a big price reduction in the 4K market. I should qualify this by saying the $300 US price tag for the M27UP is the expected global retail price and may need to be adjusted if the tariff situation changes. The monitor is manufactured in China, so we'll have to see how pricing unfolds throughout the year, but Gigabyte are confident they will have the best value 4K monitor on the market. Gigabyte's M-series monitors have recently received a design refresh, which in my opinion looks a lot better than previous iterations. The biggest change is the new stand, which includes a flat, thin, hexagonal base made entirely from metal. I think it looks great and it adds a premium touch to what is otherwise a low-cost product. The stand pillar is now a smaller tube design, also constructed largely from metal, which complements the base nicely. It has good stability and retains a lot of ergonomic adjustability, including height, tilt, swivel, and pivot movement. The flatter, smaller base gives you a lot more desk space as well, and it's easy to put stuff on top of it. The display section has received an updated design as well. The front is pretty standard, normal bezels on three sides, and a moderately thick chin along the bottom edge. There's now a much more prominent Gigabyte logo area at the bottom, which also houses the OSD controls. The rear appears to take some inspiration from a lot of modern OLEDs using a central box sort of design, even though this is an LCD. This makes the monitor look somewhat thin relative to other LCDs, though of course the box section is still there. The actual design of this rear panel is the weakest aspect. It's made of a basic black plastic and it looks quite gamery. There's a fake grille thing at the top, plenty of lines and seams throughout the design, plus a few different textured elements. It looks fine. There's no RGB LED lighting here. I mean, it's basically what you'd expect from a budget monitor. The port selection is typical of a modern 4K monitor. There's one DisplayPort 1.4 with DSC and two HDMI 2.1 48 gigabits per second ports with DSC, both of which allow for the full 160Hz refresh rate. There's also a USB-C supporting DP alt mode and 18 watts of power delivery, plus a 3-port USB 3.2 5 gigabits per second hub. Gigabyte have included their usual KVM switch functionality, which is nice. On this monitor, DSC is partially required and it can be disabled. On DisplayPort 1.4, it's essential for hitting 160Hz. On HDMI 2.1, DSC is used to achieve 10-bit 160Hz. Disabling DSC will limit you to either 8-bit 160Hz or 10-bit 120Hz, though I see no reason to disable DSC. HDMI VRR is supported in addition to adaptive sync over DisplayPort. The OSD is controlled through a directional toggle along the bottom edge. It includes Gigabyte's standard interface with the usual range of color controls and gaming features, with a good selection of features across both areas. On the gaming side, Gigabyte offer crosshairs, shadow boosting, a zoomed sniper mode, a night vision mode which turns the display green for some reason, flash dimming, and various information readouts. Dual mode is accessed through a separate button to the right of the directional toggle. Pressing it once, then clicking OK using the toggle switches the monitor between the two modes. Time to look at motion performance. Gigabyte provide 5 overdrive settings, the first of which is off, which gives us a look at native panel performance. It's around 10 milliseconds on average, which is typical of a modern IPS panel. The Smart OD setting is the default though, and performance here is reasonably good. Response times are fast at just a 4.27 millisecond average, and cumulative deviation is low. 433 is a good result for an IPS at this refresh rate. However, there is some inverse ghosting visible as overshoot is a little too high. The level of inverse ghosting is not overly problematic and only presents as a faint lighter trail following moving objects, but it's definitely there if you look closely. Picture quality is slightly slower than Smart OD, but this allows the monitor to produce less inverse ghosting. So with a small increase in response times, inverse ghosting is removed almost entirely, and in my opinion this is the optimal configuration for 160Hz gaming. The cumulative deviation average is very slightly improved as well, as the balance between speed and overshoot is better in this configuration. Bounce gives us nearly the same response time performance as Smart OD, while speed is very fast, and this comes with a lot of overshoot, so there's no reason to use that configuration. While the picture quality mode is marginally better than Smart OD for overall motion at 160Hz, it's not as good for lower refresh rate gaming. At 120Hz, the level of inverse ghosting increases, and anything below that, this mode isn't suitable, with quite obvious artifacts. However, the Smart OD mode does appear to be utilizing some form of variable overdrive, and so keeps overshoot in check at lower refresh rates. In fact, if anything, overshoot becomes a little less visible at lower refreshes, though this comes at the expense of slower response times as well. In my opinion, the Smart OD mode is usable at the maximum 160Hz refresh rate at 4K, so based on that, I would say this monitor does have a single overdrive mode experience, and most gamers are best off setting and forgetting the Smart OD setting. If you're playing up around 160Hz, the picture quality mode gives a marginally better experience, but it's not worth constantly changing modes over. The M27UP also offers dual mode, allowing you to change into a 1080p 320Hz configuration at the press of a button. Like other dual mode monitors, this is a seamless experience. Changing over to 1080p still preserves full color performance and most features, so things like adaptive sync are still usable. In its 1080p mode, integer scaling is not used, so one 1080p pixel activates more than 4 of the panel's native pixels. Gigabyte do not offer screen size emulation when dual mode is enabled, so you can't set the panel to look like a 24-inch 1080p screen, something we've seen from other dual mode displays. You can set a 24-inch size in the OSD, but only at 4K and only with adaptive sync disabled. Settings are carried between the modes, so as an example, if you set bounce overdrive at 1080p, it will also set bounce overdrive at 4K and vice versa. Why would you want to use a 1080p resolution on a 4K monitor, you might ask? Well, the idea behind dual mode is to lower the panel's resolution so it can run faster, providing a higher refresh rate for smoother, clearer visuals and lower input lag. This mode is primarily meant for multiplayer gaming, where motion clarity and responsiveness takes precedence over sharpness and resolution. With the dual mode monitor, you can have a single display that provides a great resolution in one mode for desktop work and single player gaming, and a high refresh rate in a different mode for multiplayer gaming, giving the screen more versatility than it otherwise would have. LCDs with dual mode need to support the 1080p configuration well through fast response times. The good news is Gigabyte have come to the table and optimized this panel well. Using the Smart OD setting at 320Hz, we see an average response time of just 3.9 milliseconds with minimal inverse ghosting, very good refresh rate compliance, and low cumulative deviation. The picture quality mode is slightly slower, the bounce mode is about the same as Smart OD, and the speed mode is still the extreme setting. What's also good to see is that Smart OD is viable for the entirety of the display's extended refresh rate at 1080p. This configuration is fast and very usable at 240Hz and 200Hz as well, while anything below 160Hz delivers the same response time tuning as the 4K mode. This gives us a single overdrive mode experience in the 1080p mode as well as the 4K mode from the very same overdrive setting, ensuring gamers never have to switch away from what is ultimately the default out-of-the-box overdrive configuration. It also means the 320Hz mode provides a genuine increase in clarity over the 4K 160Hz mode, meaning dual mode is actually useful on this display, and we have tested products in the past where this hasn't been the case, or where dual mode only provides a narrow range of usability. The M27UP comes with one of the better dual mode experiences on an LCD. When compared to other monitors, here I'm focusing on the 4K experience, and we see the M27UP offers very competitive response times at its maximum 160Hz refresh rate. There's a couple of other dual mode LCDs in this chart, the Asus XG27UCG and the Dell AW2725QF, and the M27UP ends up basically on par with those displays. It also outperforms the Gigabyte M27U and M27UA while offering less overshoot than the M28U. So this is a very promising start for the lowest cost 4K gaming monitor. On average, the M27UP is one of the faster 27-inch 4K displays you can get, though overshoot is a little on the high side compared to other monitors. Still, it's once again in a strong position compared to the XG27UCG as an example, though overall performance is similar to the last generation M27U. In cumulative deviation, we can get an overall look at the balance between response time speed and overshoot. Typically, today's best IPS LCDs slot in somewhere around 500 to 600 on average, and the M27UP is actually closer to the top of that range. It has very similar average performance to the Asus XG27UCG and its predecessor, the M27UA, so generally the experience here is solid. It's not that much faster than the M28U though, which we reviewed nearly 4 years ago. The M28U launched at $600 US though, and today the same sort of experience is just $300 with dual mode added to the package. At 120Hz, the M27UP offers a pretty good experience, though overshoot is a bit higher than some of its competitors. At 60Hz, this display offers a pretty typical experience from a 4K IPS and is very suitable for console gaming as an example. Of course, we should also compare dual mode performance to other monitors, so here's a chart for that. The M27UP is actually quite fast at 1080p 320Hz, even compared to some of the 1080p displays we've tested over time. There are some TN LCDs which are faster, of course. Those are premium esports displays with elite backlight strobing, but outside of that, the M27UP is excellent for an IPS LCD. It slightly outperforms the XG27UCG and is noticeably faster than the AW2725QF, despite the Alienware coming with a higher 360Hz refresh rate. Input latency is low, with the M27UP providing a sub 1 millisecond processing delay in the 4K and 1080p modes. This leads to responsiveness on par with other 4K monitors at a similar refresh rate. For a lower latency experience, you should use the dual mode configuration. Also, I was pleased to see that input lag in the 60Hz mode is low, which is rare among gaming displays. Power consumption is typical. The M27UP consumes 28 watts, displaying a 200 nit full white screen. This is in the same ballpark as the M27U series and is noticeably less power consumption than the older M28U model. Other dual mode LCDs have similar sorts of power consumption. The M27UP is a standard wide gamut gaming monitor offering 95% coverage of DCI-P3. This display uses a wide gamut capable backlight but does not use quantum dots, so the overall gamut isn't as high as we see from the best monitors. Total Rec 2020 coverage is 71%, on the low side in 2025, but not any different to other 4K IPS LCDs, including previous Gigabyte versions. Default grayscale performance is pretty good, gamma performance is very accurate, and the color temperature is okay, though my unit came with a slight red tint from the factory. Overall Delta E performance is decent. Saturation and color checker results do show oversaturation as sRGB SDR content is expanded to fill the display's wide gamut, though because the panel isn't hugely wide gamut, things like skin tones aren't too badly affected. Compared to other monitors, we get a slightly better than average grayscale result and good color checker performance. With Windows Auto Color Management enabled, the M27UP is very accurate, so this is a great way to improve performance while maintaining full control over the various settings in the OSD. Gigabyte do a great job of reporting color primaries to Windows, ensuring 99% sRGB coverage. The sRGB mode is another solid way to improve performance in the SDR mode and is particularly useful when hooking up this monitor to a source device that doesn't support color management. Grayscale gamma is improved in this mode, lowering delta E's, though the color temperature remains slightly tinted red, and in this mode many settings are locked so you can't adjust color temperature. Saturation and color checker are pretty solid in this mode. Compared to other monitors, sRGB mode grayscale performance is excellent and keeps Gigabyte in a strong position. The M28U and M27UA have also been very well calibrated, so this is keeping Gigabyte right near the top of the charts. Color checker performance is also good, not outstanding, but very solid and good enough to call this display factory calibrated. Now you can improve performance further through a full calibration, and I used CalMan for that. For most people, I would recommend using Windows ACM and then adjusting some of the white balance controls in hardware, which allows for a decent level of hardware calibration. Outside of that, an ICC profile can tidy up any other areas that can't be resolved through setting tweaks. Maximum SDR brightness is good at 404 nits. This is slightly higher than other M27U family monitors and around the typical range for a 4K LCD, the best of which can reach 500 nits. I think this level of brightness will be more than sufficient for most use cases. Minimum brightness of 47 nits is also acceptable. This display has a native contrast ratio of 12:10:1, which is on par with other 4K dual mode displays using IPS panels. It's much better than the 9:10:1 we got with the M27U and 14% better than the M27UA. With that said, there are lots of other IPS LCDs that deliver around the 1200:1 mark, so it's not that special. Also, because IPS LCDs in general have a low contrast ratio, black levels are not very good compared to VA LCDs or OLEDs. However, there are really no 27-inch 4K VA LCDs in this price range, so you're basically stuck with this level of IPS contrast performance if you want a mainstream 4K gaming monitor. I was satisfied with the viewing angles available on this monitor with no concerns during regular usage. Uniformity was also pretty good. I noticed a bit of fall off along the left and right edges, but nothing that was too bad for gaming or productivity apps. I'd say this is a pretty standard LCD experience once again. A quick note here on HDR performance, the M27UP doesn't have sufficient hardware for a good HDR experience, given it has no local dimming at all, not even zoned edge-lit dimming. Brightness also tops out at just 483 nits in the HDR mode. This results in a bad HDR presentation that lacks the level of contrast and brightness that's required to make HDR actually look good. For this reason, I would not purchase this display if you were interested in solid HDR. Final section of this review is the Hub Essentials checklist. Gigabyte do a good job of advertising this monitor, the only major misstep being its HDR support. With that said, this is not a prominent aspect of the advertising on their website. It's only listed in the spec sheet and as a logo among many others on the main page. New to this part of the review is an evaluation of the monitor's name. Most monitors have a terrible name, but Gigabyte with their M series products tends to use a shorter and more memorable name. M27UP is just 5 characters and it's relatively easy to remember, although there is a moderate potential for confusion given Gigabyte have other similar products like the M27U and M27UA, which are different. Searching for this monitor immediately brings up this product and only this product, which is good, but it's not an especially unique name given letters like 27U are quite common. Overall though, I think this is a good name and one of the better ones. In the feature support matrix, we see poor support for HDR as previously discussed, although motion quality is good and a higher than 240Hz refresh rate is supported at 1080p. Input lag is low and Gigabyte do support backlight strobing, though I didn't cover it extensively here because it produces mediocre image quality, especially at 160Hz. Some other things to note is that the product does come with built-in speakers, DSC is only required for 10-bit 160Hz, and there are no real flickering or pixel inversion concerns. Overall, the Gigabyte M27UP is a great 4K gaming monitor. It performs just like other 4K 160Hz IPS LCDs that we've reviewed in the past. In fact, if anything, it delivers better than average performance, and it includes dual mode, which many of its competitors don't include. At an MSRP of just $300 US, I think this is an excellent value monitor, and it will be unbeatable for mainstream 4K gaming. Gigabyte tick all the boxes once again with their M series, resulting in a well-balanced monitor at this price point. The IPS LCD panel used here is very similar to ones we've seen in much more expensive monitors, and Gigabyte have tuned it reasonably well for 4K gaming. It's fast, it has a single overdrive mode experience, and even some degree of variable overdrive. With low input lag, even at 60Hz, you're getting a great monitor for single-player gaming. On top of this, we get dual mode, allowing the display to run at 1080p 320Hz. Again, Gigabyte have tuned this mode really well, so it delivers a meaningful improvement in motion quality over the 4K mode. This expands the versatility of the M27UP and now makes it even more suitable for competitive gaming. The desktop experience is great as a flat 27-inch 4K panel, it's great for single-player games at 4K 160Hz, and it's fast and responsive for multiplayer games at 1080p 320Hz. Of course, you don't have to use dual mode, you could just ignore that feature and enjoy its fantastic value as a 4K monitor, but for those that play a wide variety of games, it's a great inclusion. Color performance is very solid, offering decent brightness, good factory calibration, a wide color gamut, and acceptable IPS level contrast. It's not a standout in any of these areas, and it lacks real HDR hardware, but it looks fine and has a great resolution. This is very much the same color experience we've seen across 4K IPS LCDs for several years now, and Gigabyte have made no horrific tuning errors. There's honestly very little to complain about here. This is panel hardware that used to cost between $400 and $500 US, now available for just $300 US. With no apparent compromises to hit that price, you simply can't fault it. The only way this monitor gets meaningfully better is with better panel hardware, and it's unreasonable to expect that at the lowest ever price we've seen for 4K 160Hz. This is a highly disruptive monitor in my opinion if it's available at the advertised price tag, which may not be the case if it's in high demand or if the tariff situation changes, or indeed if you're outside the US. There is no reason to buy any other 27-inch 4K IPS LCD for gaming when the M27UP exists at $300 US. It kills Gigabyte's previous M27U and M28U products, which are more expensive and not as good. It kills other similar products like the LG 27GR93U that we've recommended in the past. There's essentially no reason to spend 40% more to get the same sort of performance, and it also kills all the other dual mode 4K LCDs we've tested, like the Asus XG27UCG. That monitor is $450. Gigabyte are giving you practically the same thing for $150 less, eliminating the need to pay a premium for dual mode. The only thing you'll have to decide here is whether it's worth spending $300 on a 4K IPS LCD without HDR or on a 1440p VA LCD with HDR, like the AOC Q27G40XMN that we recently reviewed. That decision ultimately comes down to what you want in a gaming monitor, and there's no wrong choice in my opinion. But what I will say is that if you choose to get a 27-inch 4K monitor, I strongly recommend the M27UP. In fact, I wouldn't recommend anything else. Gigabyte here have earned an extremely rare universal recommendation from me in this category, so kudos to them. So anyway, that's it for this review of the Gigabyte M27UP. If you did end up purchasing this monitor based on this review, or if you found it particularly helpful in your search for a new gaming monitor, then please consider supporting us via Patreon. This is the best way to support the channel. If you sign up, you'll get access to some cool benefits. We've got a Discord community, great for getting monitor recommendations. We've got our calibrated settings, ICC profiles for all the monitors we review. That's also available. And you just support our independent testing and reviews. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.